All right, looks like we're live. Hello and welcome, Final Take fans. I'm here with John. I just
Final
thought
take fan or final take fan?
fan one
Maybe.
singular.
Maybe.
I decided to do a improv um, stream here of my process of storyboarding and just talking about pre-production, mostly talking about pre-production in general and the benefits of pre-production. Um, And then John had a little bit of time, so we decided he'll join in, and it'll probably be less boring than me just drawing and getting caught up in the drawing and not talking for 5 minutes to the stream. How you doing, John?
I've been good, man. Just doing my thing. How about you?
I'm here, man, chilling. Uh, your friend or our friend and I have been working on the pre-production for his film, The Last Today, and
Hmm.
I started getting the basic storyboards out. Obviously, I'll flesh them out more than they are on the screen right now. But I'm getting just a basic layout of shots and stuff from a shot list that we have that we're working on. Just trying to
Hmm.
get back into drawing and get back into the storyboarding. And I figured,
Hmm.
why not stream it since I can and talk about pre-production.
Sounds good. Sounds good. How's how's it been working with Robert? Actually, it's our mutual friend Robert Pierre. He's actually doing about a 10 minute short. It's kind of like a neo noir inspired detective story. Uh, set place in set place in modern times, but it's just gonna have a little bit of that, believe 50s flair to it. Um, Robert actually went to Miami Dade Community College with me in the early 2000s. That's where we actually graduated from film production.
Oh,
Pretty swell guy with us. As you know, the more that we actually get into his project, we'll probably end up dabbling into conversations. Hopefully, he'll come in stream with us one of these episodes. But so far, Jazz and him have been working on this project, and I guess Jazz is going to show us what he's been dabbling on in terms of pre-production and storyboarding.
yeah. So what I have on the screen right now is the first six shots, not in any order. If you notice, I've got this intermediate shot that I'm gonna add. I don't know if you can see. Maybe I think my camera's frozen. Hold on. Oh, here you go. Okay. Um, see, we've got shot one, scene one, which you can't. I guess you can't really see it on the camera. And then we have this empty shot that I just thought of him opening
Mm-hmm.
the glass door because the guy's walking through a liquor store and buying a bottle of liquor. That's how the film
Mm-hmm.
starts. And he talks to one of the clerks at the counter, and then you get the reverse. And I've got some suggested, which you can't really see here, but I've got suggested millimeter length for the head for the basically the close up, which is 70 to
Mm-hmm.
90 millimeters. And the reason I note 70 to 90 millimeters is because this gives you an aesthetically pleasing look and it doesn't distort any facial features on the
Mm-hmm.
actors. So that's a good range to kind of maintain if you're doing straight on close ups or headshots. Anything below that, you start to get some distortions, like the nose gets bigger and the ears get smaller because it starts pulling the thing apart. And anything higher than 100 millimeters for a close up is bad because then it compresses everything to the point where the head starts to look really oddly flat. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm adding in, certain suggestions here. Well, that's the only one so far, but there'll be more to come. And then if you see, I've got arrows in here because this shot is going to be
Mm-hmm.
following him through the scene.
Yes.
And I've got my grid here, which I can turn on and off. Which, by the way, before I forget, let me make sure these are all locked. So if you look, my shape 10 layer is my grid, so that I can get more or less a compositional sense of where the character should be for an aesthetically pleasing look.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got, my 50% gray that I just start with because that way I already have half the depth in there. All I have to do is pull things out with highlights and drop things back with shadows. And I've got this layer here which can be deleted, which was a screw up that I did that I had to redraw one of the frames because I was drawing on my guide layer like a jackass. But anyways. So anyways, John, you've done some short films in the past. What do you believe are good important steps for pre-production in any production.
Well, yeah, obviously besides having a final draft of your script, uh, I personally learn things more visually than perhaps other forms, and having a solid storyboard is, at least to me, has been key in the productions I did when I was younger. A lot of I actually not a good I can't paint or draw, but I can. So what I do that a lot was actually go to the sets I was going to shoot at and take pictures, and take my actor or a stand-in and actually kind of like do the storyboard via photography. But it does give you a great visual representation of what the shot is going to end up looking like, and actually have the sequence of these scenes are going to pace out together. So I would say having a good storyboard is a great visual medium in order to a visual reference to whatever project or short film you end up doing. Um, See what else I would recommend. Also, perhaps I would probably also add maybe obviously like the usual production stuff, like having like your set locales, having it, getting your arrangements done in order so when it's the day comes to shoot, you're able to actually have these locations set up for you. But not gonna lie, it's been a while since I had done a project, but I definitely think a storyboard is a solid way of having a reference.
I agree. I think storyboards are that I've had several conversations with several different directors about this, and it's one of those things that you should get storyboards done in pre-production, um, even if you don't use them during production. I think just the fact that you have it gives you a kind of like it gives you a pre-visualization of what things are going to look like when you start working on the film, so you have an idea of what kind of shots you're going for. And like I said, even if you don't use them while you're shooting, at least you've already had the experience of how these shots are going to look. And apparently, I can't draw and talk at the same time, so these are looking really shitty. But whatever, I'm just getting layouts in place. Um,
Uh, I was gonna ask you, now that you have, you know, done actual, you've actually shot your own films or have been a DP in several other projects, and with your knowledge with photography and overall filmmaking, when you actually are composing as of right now, like like you're doing Robert's storyboarding, how much when you're actually coming up with a storyboard are you referring, how much your experience behind the camera, understanding how the equipment works, influences the actual composition of your art when it comes to the storyboarding, like each frame, like do you, obviously you bring all these factors into consideration, has that evolved throughout time in your process of storyboarding?
I think in the end, it kind of it's more or less the same. You're just trying to get your basic composition of what things are going to look. I think when it comes to certain projects that I've worked on, I haven't had the benefit of knowing what the set is going to look like. So I kind of just make up where the set is, what the set's going to be more or less, and for the storyboards. And then the problem with that is that when you get onto set, then you realize that reverse that you want on a certain character or like a two shot is going to be really difficult because there's no room to actually get that shot. So you might have to omit it, you might have to skip it, you might have to adjust it in a certain way, you might have to cheat characters if you really want that shot.
Hmm.
So when your location changes, obviously some storyboards become obsolete. So what I try to just focus on when it comes to storyboards is general composition and just to give a representation of what you're aiming for. Now,
I see.
what you get on set can be wildly different. Typically, not. I wouldn't say wildly different because you're either adding or omitting a shot. I think when it comes to the
Mhm.
storyboards, you're still keeping the compositional sense of the shot.
Yeah.
You're just making allowances for sets that aren't exactly what you pictured them to be, or
Hmm.
whatever other limitations you might have on the day of shoot.
On this particular process that you're going through with Robert's short story, uh, Is it have you had a discussion with Robert in terms of like this is how he envisions each shot to go? Or are you doing an interpretation of a screenplay and adapting it into a storyboard, and then kind of see how that matches in further discussions?
Well, the steps. So the steps so far is I worked up a shot list for us based on
Mm-hmm.
his screenplay. So I broke down his screenplay into the series of shots that I think we might need, at least the basic, the ground requirement of shots that we need.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sent him an editable copy, and he went through and he chose, okay, this I don't want this shot, and he has good reasons as to why he doesn't want a certain shot, and then he added in a few shots that I might have left out, or
Mm-hmm.
other creative shots that I might not have thought of. That's something that he wants. Like in
Mm-hmm.
the case of, for instance, this scene one. Um, I'll give you an example here. If you look at the stream, John, you'll be able to see what I'm doing. Um, or here, I can share my screen with you. Well, actually,
I can see it. I actually have a screen with the storyboard. If you can put it up, I'm watching what you're doing.
okay. So initially, I thought we can follow the main character, Leonardo, walking through the scene, but have him centered in the frame, and then the camera just follows him through the
Mm-hmm.
scene. But he also wants a shot, which is what I just drew, which is here, where he wants kind of a more over the shoulder, which actually should probably be tighter here, so that we get more of an over the shoulder of him being followed through. But then he also wants a wider shot of, which I could draw it right here, which would be like, these would be the shelves, right? And then the character walking through the scene, being followed from the side, just from aisle to aisle as he walks through the scene. Hands in his pockets or whatever. And so those are shots that came up during conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So like this shot I didn't write in there, but this shot is something that he added in, where it's like, an over the shoulder, following the character through. Let's see if I can cover that. And then you have him walking from aisle to aisle, kind of panning across. So for
Mm-hmm.
panning across, I'll just add arrows, and then I'll make a note, or rather, following Leo. Through the aisles. So now we know, the camera is panning from right to left in this case. I mean, obviously he
Mm-hmm.
could flip it if he has to, and then this one would just be following him through the aisles over a shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And these sketches, this is the thing too. A lot of people are like, how do I do storyboards if I can't draw? These drawings are not any works of art. Obviously, I plan on rendering them further
Mm-hmm.
as we go along. But I mean, even with little sketches like this, you still get the compositional element. He's in the first third of the frame, you're more looking over his right shoulder, and then
Mm-hmm.
here you've got more of a wide, where you're following him, watching him move from aisle to aisle.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need an art degree to be able to do storyboards. I could leave them like this, and we could shoot this, and they'd be fine. Like I said, I still want to render them further and give them more shading and depth. But even just with this right here, you can take this and you can shoot it if you
Well,
want
it's
to.
essentially a schematic of what ideally or a shop could end up looking once you go into the production process.
Exactly.
How much? I do have a question also. Like, how much of as you are composing these storyboards, is there obviously there is, like I said before, a visual representation of how these shots could potentially look like, but and these drawings that you're making, are you also adding narrative context into those particular storyboards?
As far as notes,
Or I'm saying actually more along the lines of the drawings. Do they actually have do they have a narrative context within that are included in the process of drawing these storyboards?
I guess I'm not really understanding how would I add a narrative context into this. I mean, they're essentially
I guess what I'm saying, like, okay, what I'm trying to get at is that the each frame that you're composing, besides how it could visually play out when you potentially shoot the film, are you also arranging them in terms of the narrative that's behind, or is there a narrative purpose to how you're arranging these compositions while you're
there.
actually doing the
Yes,
process of storytelling
there
of
will
story?
be, but since I started this yesterday while we were still editing, I just wanted to
Okay.
kind of get back into practice. That's why
Hmm.
you have things like I guess these are actually I ended up moving them around. But at first it was like shot one, shot three, shot five, and so see like in
Hmm.
the case of here you have four, six, and five.
Yeah.
So what I'll do later because I got to recompose this shot five right here because I
Hmm.
drew it out of frame, so I got to move it in. So and then I'll move it into to the middle spot, so it's four, five, and
Yeah.
six. So there is a step by step, but I'm still not covering like if you have a medium shot of a character and it goes back and forth, I'm not going to draw that back and forth. I'll draw the one and the second one, and then you can kind of assume that's going to cover both shots or both requirements. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because it's still two like again like for here you have the clerk. Oh, oops. The clerk talking to the to Leo, right? So you already know if they keep if this conversation goes on for 5 minutes, you're cutting back and forth. I don't need to add the lines and then cut. Okay, here's where you cut into him. Here's where you cut into there. Those are more editing decisions you do in post. So there is a flow to it, but I'm not covering every single. I'm not thinking of the editing as much in this process. I'm more focusing on the required shots and what they should look like.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah, I see. I see. I understand that. Okay.
So yeah, switching back. I might have to take a bathroom break. I've jacked up on coffee today, so. But
Nice.
other benefits are like a shot list. I think is very beneficial. To let me see if I can pull up a.
I
Um,
actually should have digged out since this was kind of like an impromptu stream. I probably would have pulled out of my archives my actual production dossier for my short film that I did, during school,
that'd be
which is
cool.
it's a pretty cool actually. For anybody that's you know like going to film school or just wants to kind of like see how it works. It's a good it's a good little like guide to like see how more or less what's like what professors expect your production notes or your production dossier to kind of like come together.
Sure.
And you know and obviously like if you're an experienced filmmaker you're have knowledge of that. But for everybody that's new, it's a good set of organizational steps when you go into making your movie.
Yeah, I would say like for instance, I pulled up the shot list. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
So this is actually an outdated version of the shot list. I kept a copy of the original one that I did so I can compare in case things changed and I couldn't reference back to them.
Hmm.
But so we've already added to this. But if you look in the case of like, see, you have it is good for organization. Now, for a scene like shot one, I mean, for scene one, you don't really need that much organization because the script kind of dictates what you need.
Hmm.
I think in cases of like when we shot Shadows and Forms,
Hmm.
I think there was one day specifically, and I believe Eric and I talked about it in the interview that I did for him for this channel, and I'll add a link below so you can check that out if you're interested. It was a good interview, and he's a cool guy. We had one day that we had about 30 people on set, and it was during a gallery opening scene.
Hmm.
And I thought I was going to stress out like crazy that day because I'm like, how am I going to light all these people? I don't have that many lights. How am I going to get all those shots in one day? Because we only had one day to do it. And it ended up being one of the most entertaining days of the shoot. because it was, I mean, it was run and gun. Basically, the one Eric sat in the back and he had this giant spreadsheet of all the shots that we needed. And so Steve and I would walk to him and we'd be like, okay, what do you need? He's like, okay, you got to get JD and Allie talking to each other in a back room. So we'd grab JD and Allie, and we'd run to a back room, and we'd take the shots, right? 2, 3 shots of the different things that we needed, and then we'd go back. He's like, okay, what do you need? Okay, this chick needs to walk in the front door. She needs to stumble. She's drunk, and then you follow her, into the gallery. So then we'd go and we'd grab her and start shooting that. And then so it was just going back and forth, and he was just checking them off one by one by one, and it was a lot of fun because it was a constant moving. And then obviously we had everybody. It was for a more of a music video type of scene, so we didn't have to like quiet the set. So you basically had this huge group of people all talking to each other, interacting, and they knew that we were gonna like walk through them and just don't look at the camera, and all this stuff. So it was really entertaining. But back to my point, for a scene, for a shot, I'm sorry, for a scene like scene one, you don't need that much. Like you could just go off the notes and get what you need. But for a scene like that, where there's 60 shots, let's just say, you're not going to keep that in your head, and it'd be very easy to skip a few important shots just by accident. So having a shot list, I mean, even if you don't have the storyboards, just having a shot list of what you need so you can check off and make sure you got everything you needed is very, very important. And it's very helpful when you get to production. I mean, this is
Yes.
good to kind of get an idea of what you're aiming for, but it's also your checklist to make sure that you get your required things, because I mean there are times you're not going to be able, you have one day on a set and you're never going to be able to go back.
Yeah.
So if you miss a shot, you're screwed. And God forbid you miss an important shot that you really need for the story, then how the hell are you going to do that?
I think that this this suggestion that you're making obviously applies to all productions, but specifically to, once again, younger filmmakers who perhaps just want to jump into a production and kind of might want to wing it certain things. That even in a state, even if your production is, either if it's a production because for a school project or you're making your own movie, you want to be able to go into it as prepared as you can,
Yes.
because you really don't have as much time as you think you do.
No,
I mean,
you never
like
do. You never do.
my experience in productions have been that you end up spending 13 hours, 14 hours, and if you get a handful of shots, a couple scenes, you've actually had a successful shooting day, because between arranging every single aspect that goes into a shot, whether it's rearranging lights or just getting anything according to how the shot specific has to go, is not it's a very time consuming experience,
Hmm.
and you want to go in it as prepared as you can. And having a shot list, having a storyboard, having like even like how do you call, I forgot the name of it now, like having like a script coordinator. I mean, somebody that keeps in touch of what's been going
Script
on to keep
supervisor.
constant. Yeah, script supervisor. Like, you want to have these tools eh, in front of you, because you want to be as efficient when you actually get to shooting, because it is very time consuming to even arrange a shot.
Well, and I think that's part of what I wanted to get at with this specific chat is, you can never have too much pre-production. That being said, most indie filmmakers don't have the benefit of having that much time in pre-production or production, because like the reason why you want to organize as much as you can is because when you get to set, most indie productions don't have multi-million dollars and have built sets, meaning that you're taking over somebody's space because they're kind enough to lend you the space. So if they tell you can shoot for a day, you've got that day, and that's it. Maybe you can talk them into kind of getting into the back and being out of the way and getting one more shot if you need it later. But don't ever plan on that, because that's never written in stone, especially when people are lending you locations.
Yeah, your resources are limited in when you're doing something that's on a menial budget.
Right. So you want to make sure you get what you need that day, and that's what a shot list helps you with, and that's what things like pre-visualization with like storyboards and stuff helps you with, because you have it in your head. Now that you've seen it here, you have it in your head, and you have your checklist of everything that you need. So it's a lot harder to miss a shot. And even then, you'll still probably miss a shot. If you shoot long enough, you're gonna eventually like go, shit, I thought I shot that and I didn't. You know. Luckily, with more experience, hopefully it was just some inconsequential close up or something. You don't have that cutaway, but whatever, no big deal.
Yeah, of course.
You know. Um, so I don't know. I think things like that are, and then obviously going over drafts of the script are very important. You want to make sure you have the tightest script that you can before you start any of this process. Before you even get into pre-production most of the time, but things still change. Things change during pre-production. Things change during production. Well, you'll want to change a couple lines or whatever. That's always going to happen. But just kind of keep it as close to final as you can when you start doing your storyboards, when you start doing your shot lists. That way it's not, you don't add to the confusion of having to go back and forth and did I get this, did I not do that?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I really think it's important, and it's also a good tool for the actors because they get to see what's going on. They get to see because obviously when they're in front of the camera, they have no idea what you're shooting. I could be shooting their feet when I'm shooting behind them, and they have no freaking idea.
Yeah.
So this at least gives them an idea of what they should be. Where the shot is. Not that they should necessarily focus on what the shot is, because that's not their part, but they can at least factor that into, okay, I shouldn't pick my nose because my head is in the scene right now. Now, if I'm across an actor and he's doing his lines and I feel like picking my nose and I know I'm off camera, then go ahead. Might distract the actor, but hey, go ahead. At least you're not on camera.
That's awesome. On your previous, if I'm not mistaken, your last endeavor as a director of photography was with monsters or shadows and forms. Um, how much of
That was the not the last. The last narrative thing I DP'd was the package.
Oh, okay.
Did you see that?
No.
I'll,
Or
I'll,
maybe I did. I don't remember.
I'll get you a link. Yeah, it was
But
it was a short film, but anyways, yeah, and then yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
well, I'll go. Well, just to kind of like go into shadows and forms, like trying to think of the right question to ask you. As a director of photography, uh, did you do a storyboard for that film, or was this another member of the production?
I did, and I thought I had it here somewhere. I should have. I thought about getting it. It might be in the car. I did, and if
Okay.
you look at the storyboards for Shadows and Forms, it's basically this. I mean, it's glorified stick figures.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I wanted to get an idea of what the shot composition would be like, but
Mm-hmm.
also I couldn't get too detailed with it because I had no idea what any of the sets were going to look like. I basically got to set that day and had to figure out how we were going to, place everybody, where everybody was going to be, and where I was going to
Mm-hmm.
set the camera.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
And there's some locations, like there was a location, we had a bar that we were going to shoot at. I think we were shooting on Saturday. We had a bar that we were going to shoot at. And that Saturday, on Sunday, and that Saturday, the bar fell through. So I had to find us another bar that Saturday while we were shooting. I'm on the phone and we're shooting and stuff. And I had a buddy who had a hookup, and we ended up getting another bar. Now, yeah, great. I got a set. We're not going to screw up that day of shooting, but now I have no idea what the set's going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to get in there and kind of figure it out that day. Luckily, the guy who lent us the bar, if I could remember the name, I'll name drop it for him. That guy was super accommodating, and he
Mm-hmm.
kind of just let us run. He gave us run of the house so we could do whatever
Yeah.
we needed. So we
Mm-hmm.
and we just moved a couple things around. We didn't really manipulate the set too much. Thankfully, like everything was set up in a way where we could shoot comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean comfortably in the sense that without the stress of somebody watching over your shoulder. It was less comfortable because it was a very tiny bar.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really cool little bar, but it's super tiny. It was like a 10 by 13 room with a bar in it.
Oh man, that's definitely a hole in the wall.
Yeah, but it was cool. But the thing is, that also limits where you can put your camera, especially when you factor
Of
in you have
course.
tables and shit like that. And it's like, where the hell am I going to put
Yeah.
my lights and all that? But it all worked out really well. Like some of those shots, I think, are actually some of the prettiest shots in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully. So, but yeah, there's a lot of improvisation, especially when you're doing independent films. And this is the
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing where it's like, yeah, I storyboarded it, but I could say that maybe half of the storyboards for that particular scene, except for the close-ups, were thrown in the trash because I was factoring in for a larger location,
Mm-hmm.
and then we ended up getting something a lot smaller.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
But it also opened up some elements where I got some cutaways from the details of the actual bar. We actually had the guy who owns the bar act in it. He was serving us real drinks, and we decided to shoot it with the actors getting the drinks instead of us. And it opened up the opportunity. So yeah, sure, I lost maybe 3, 4 shots from the storyboards, but I also gained maybe like 6 or 7 more
Yeah, that
because
that that leads to something else I was thinking about. Like, obviously, because of the uncertainty of, especially when you're in independent and low budget production, where these things are very manuable. Like, what is the proper balance between what is you visually had pictured shooting towards how much does that come into play when you're actually compromising certain of those aspects for what the actual location that's in hand?
I would say the one thing you don't compromise on is your story.
Okay.
If your location is not gonna help your story, if your location is actually gonna serve as a deterrent to your story, I say call that day a loss and get another location. Thankfully, we never had to do that. But I mean, if as long as you're not compromising your story, you can work around what you need to work around to get the shots that you need.
Mm-hmm.
If it's in the case of that bar, it was two characters having a conversation and kind of finding out certain things about themselves and about the people that
Mm-hmm.
surround them, and that all still worked out because it's basically two guys shooting the shit sitting next to each other,
Yeah.
over a beer. So it was easy to still get that. I mean, I could have shot that in a huge bar, or I could have shot that in that 10 by 13 14 foot room, and we still it didn't affect the narrative in any way.
Mm-hmm.
We still got what we needed. So definitely, if improvise with your shots on a set. If you have to get creative on the set, that's fine. But if it's going to impact your narrative negatively, I would say call it a day and don't do it.
Cut your losses
Yeah,
and shoot another day. Yeah, I see.
because you're going to
Uh,
regret it.
mm-hmm.
You're going to regret it later.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Have you, when you were in obviously in this production that you're working on with Robert, there's actually been a conversation back and forth, and there's been you sending him your sketches and him kind of like saying what he approves or doesn't approve. Um, how is how it in your previous relationship? I'm going back to Shadows and Forms or AKA Monsters. Like, how is that fine line between trying to achieve somebody's vision and also while also kind of like incorporating elements that how you visually refer to how the movie should look like?
Well, in the case of Robert, I'm not shooting it,
Mm-hmm.
so I can only like help as far as the shot list and stuff like that goes. I can't. I'm not going to be the one that's improvising on set, so I can give him a basic gist of what he's looking for, and obviously we go back and
Mm-hmm.
forth. And if he doesn't agree on something, then we discuss it. Um, so that's my limitation here. I honestly like as far as the relationship between a DP and a director, I would say get everything as clear as you can, as early as you can. Like get references together. Like one of the things that Steve did during Shadows and Forms was he gave me a list of movies that he wanted his movie to be similar to. So I took a look at them just to see. I think I watched two of them on mute just to see the composition of the shots and what he was looking for. Naturally, there are very different sets used in those movies versus what we had. So there's still that level of improvisation that you have to do. But I mean, at least it gives you a baseline. Get that baseline understanding of what you're after visually with your DP, so that they understand what their goal is. You know, and as a DP, you also have to realize, you're serving the director. You're here to get the director his vision. And there are going to be times you agree and times you disagree. But in the end, basically what I'm saying is take out your ego, because your job there is to get what he wants.
Yeah.
Obviously you can make suggestions, but you have to be able to accept the fact that you can make a suggestion, he can say I don't want that, and then you just got to drop it. Justify it as much as you want, but don't get into a fight over it on the set.
Yeah, of course.
And you especially don't want to get into a fight on set with the director, because that's obviously going to cause all kinds of problems where where the cast is going to notice that, and they're going to start questioning what the hell's going on. Mm-hmm. And you never want that mistrust.
Well, you want to create that climate.
Exactly.
Especially on set. Yeah, of course.
Exactly. So definitely take your ego out of it, but also, again, and this goes between the director and the DP. The DP should feel free to make suggestions, and the director should feel free to shoot them down if he doesn't want them. But the director should also be open to ideas, and there should be trust between the DP and the director, because if there's no trust there, then you're already starting off with like a bad footing, mm-hmm. and you don't want that. And again, and then there was a rule that Eric told me when we started shooting Shadows and Forms, and it's like, because obviously I've directed films, I've acted in films, I have ideas of how actors should do a thing, or I have an idea of how a thing should be directed. And if you're that type of DP where you have that experience and you have that input that you want to give, you should feel comfortable giving it. However, the rule was, don't talk to the actors. This is from the DP's point of view. Don't talk to the actors. Like if I had an idea, like maybe, the actor, instead of going from here to the couch, maybe he should go from here and then at the end of the scene walk out of the room. I would pull Steve aside and be like, hey, these are my thoughts. How about changing it to this, and this is the reason why. And then he could take it or leave it. He could say, yeah, that's a good idea, or he could say, no, that's not what I want, and that's fine. But I would never talk to the actor directly. You know what I mean? I tell Steve, and then Steve chooses whether he wants to do it, and then he does what he wants to do. Because in the end, as a DP, I'm there to serve the director. Mm-hmm. So, and then a lot of these choices are also made. Because remember that, and I think we said this in the interview with Eric, it's like there's 3 phases of writing. There's writing the screenplay, which is essentially pre-production. There's production when you're shooting it, and that's your second phase of writing, because things are going to change depending on various elements. And then there's editing, which is the final phase of storytelling. Yes. Because you could write something, and then when you shoot it, you see that what you wrote doesn't really work. So you rework it on set, and then when you edit it, it could be something completely different. I mean, hopefully not radically different, but it could be pretty different from the original idea.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 phases of developing a story.
How much out of all the steps in what requires to make a movie, pre-production and post, which one is the one that you feel that you're the most enthusiastic about, or that you feel like you actually contribute at the best of your potential?
That depends on what role I'm in. Obviously I write screenplays a lot, so I like that aspect of storytelling. I love the idea of putting together a screenplay. And when it comes to DP, I think during production I add, like outside the role of the DP, I add a little bit of value, because I'll come up with certain ideas that maybe they didn't think of or whatever. But for the most part, like I said, I'm there to serve the director's vision. So it depends. When it comes to post-production, I really love the editing process, and it's probably just by extension of the fact that I love to write. And editing is essentially writing, but more visually. Mm-hmm. So I guess if I was to choose, I don't know. I love basically pre and post production as far as creating the story. If I'm not the director, I don't know. I guess I can't, since I've played so many roles. It's hard for me to say it as a DP.
Mm-hmm.
I would say then obviously I add extra element to the production cycle, but I'm not involved before or after that much, anyways. In pre-production, what I like to do if I have the chance is to get more of the visual style of the film and have some kind of agreement on what the visual aesthetic should be for the film from a pre-production standpoint. From a post-production standpoint, for a DP, the best you can do is maybe color correction, but beyond that, your hands are you're kind of done with it once it hits post-production.
Mm-hmm.
So all the hard work just comes in production.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously when you're doing indies, the improvisation factor of production. So yeah, ambiguous answer, but you get the idea.
Yeah, I get the idea. I'm great at everything.
No, it's not that I'm great at everything. I just have opinions about everything.
Jazz? Oh, hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
Whatever, dude. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy.
We're not worthy.
No, that's definitely not the case.
Nah, I know.
But again, it just depends. Like again, just it's my answer is ambiguous because I've done so many roles in this thing. Like I've done everything from, I mean, like in this case when I'm helping Bobby, I mean, what role am I filling here? Storyboard artist, but I'm also like, adding suggestions here and there for like effects and, small additions to the story and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, of course.
So, I don't know. What are the other benefits of pre-production outside of storyboarding? And you know what I would say? And then I'm going to ask, do you think you can handle managing the stream by yourself for a couple minutes while I get some coffee?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Okay, before I go, one of the things that I think, definitely in pre-production, if you have the ability to do it, and I think if you don't have the ability to do it, here, I'll put it in two different ways. One of the things that you should definitely do in pre-production that I think is very important is have a read-through. If you can have more than one, then that's great. But just get the main cast together and have them read your script out loud. Because there are times that you write a line in a script that you think sounds completely natural, and when you hear it out of your actor's mouth, you go, holy crap, that line does not feel natural at all. Or like a certain conversation doesn't feel natural at all. So you have to change it and modify it. And it's better if you do that through pre-production, especially with your cast, because you get the voice of the actual people who are going to voice those characters. And then you have more of an idea. Again, it's all pre-production. It's all just preparing, get as prepared as you can before you get into production. Because once you get into production, there's a little bit of a loss of control over a lot of factors. So have your vision as sharp as you can before you get into a situation that you won't have as much control. Now, here's what I'll also say. If you get into, if in the case of that you can't do a read-through with your actors, then I say get friends, even if they're not actors, and have them read your entire script and record it and listen back to it, because that's still going to add value, because you're going to be able to see, what conversations don't feel quite right, and what lines you need to change, and maybe you might need to restructure a scene or whatever based on how it sounds. So even if you can't do it with your cast, I say you should still get people together and do a read-through, just so that as a director, so you can hear it and make sure that what you want to get across, you're getting across through dialogue. This is all before even visualization. Now, if you can shoot some test scenes, that's even better. But now we're getting into that territory where most, indie filmmakers don't have the option of.
That luxury, of course.
Yeah. So, okay, I'll leave you with that. Give me just 2 minutes.
Yeah, okay, man.
The show's yours.
All right. Anyways, while we wait for Jazz in his bathroom break, um, well, going back to what I was saying before, a lot of the productions that I did were mostly during school and a little bit afterwards. I think this is a good lesson for younger filmmakers. Um, you always want to go into production prepared. Having a great storyboard helps out a lot. I wish I can actually get my actual storyboard that I have. Actually, give me one quick second. I think I can find it real quick. It should be here somewhere. Hello. Uh, so this is one second. All right, and we're back. All right, so this is one that one of the storyboards I had done for one of the short movies we had planned. It's called Best Friends. It was more anecdotal, but as you can see, I didn't draw it. I actually took pictures of them, took some photos of it, and essentially, I would have kind of like establishing my leads here. See if I can get it closer to the camera. Let's see. Oh, I know it's not the best angle, but hopefully you guys get the idea. It's pretty much we use some colorways, some establishing shots, medium shots, more or less have an idea how the visual reference would work as. And actually shot at Denny's, so but so you can tell it was not too long. Probably would have been like a 2 minute, 3 minutes short at most. But it actually tells like a little anecdotal joke, and a anecdotal short story, and it was a good reference point to actually have. Um, oh, hey, Lewis. So pretty much I've written like a short, syllabus for the story, and pretty much follow it to, you know, creating this little storyboard. Yeah, it helps. Hey, what's up, man?
Hey.
So I got this is one of my storyboards from back in the day.
Oh, you did one of those too?
Yeah. Um. So as you can see, I was taking went to a Denny's and I was with AB, and his brother Alvaro, and then the whole point of the story is like two friends. One is choking on a fry, and when he dies, the other friend takes his money and walks away. Yeah, it was a little short thing I had come up with, but it's cool. Like I guess this is more for like those who aspire to film who are still in high school, probably just entering, taking some you know film 101 or something like that. It's a really cool little project. I mean, like, you just take pictures or you could draw them, whatever you suits you. And as you can see, each frame kind of like tells its story.
Guys,
So colorway of the
walk us through
fries.
it. Walk us through it.
Sure. So the two guys are eating at Denny's. Let me see. It's that close to the
Yeah, you're good there.
camera. All right, cool. Two friends are eating at Denny's. As I established out here. Could have probably gone either way. Perhaps going back, maybe you should have gone with Denny's there and then bring the friends in. Um, so they're just chilling there in their fries. Cut away with the fries. Then friend one here ends up choking on a fry.
Move it over a little bit. There you go.
Yeah. My friend's concerned So he tries to pretty much help him, spit the fry out. We had to use a colorway because part of the project to use some of the different elements of how you put something together.
It's
Use a
not.
bathroom door.
It's
Could have
not in
been
frame.
anything.
Not in frame. Not in frame.
Exactly. Oh, is it there?
Yeah, yeah, good.
Cool. Friend dies. Friend's sad about it, but he sees the wallet. See there with the bills. Friends has a devious smile, gets the money, and he pieces out. As you can see, not the Godfather, but it got me a B plus. So
That's
it
good.
served its purpose. So
That's funny. I should find mine, man. I did that project as well. I did this.
yeah.
It was it was while I was working at the video store. The somebody who has crazy late fees and he gets all pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy behind the counter, he doesn't realize is like this serial killer. So he takes a bat to the angry customer's head and he drags him to the back of the store to hide the body. And then he like waltzes out all smiling like, oh, nothing's going on.
That's awesome, man. It's funny, like when you're, because I did this back in 2000, and it's like, it's funny when you're young, you have this sort of like, there's this impulse towards something violent. I don't know if it was because we grew up during the age of Tarantino.
And yeah, man, it was the 90s, man. We had Usual Suspects, we had The Professional, we had Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction. I mean, come on.
Yeah, Desperado.
Yeah.
It was kind of like the modern neo-noir, films that were coming out at the time.
Yeah.
So, one thing was funny, talking about the 90s is like, and Tarantino mentioned this, like after True Romance came out, everybody kind of like was emulating his style, actually Pulp Fiction, and all the titles of the movies had like these very catchy kind of like, Truthful Consequences, New Mexico, Love in a 45, Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead.
Yeah.
So everybody had these clever titles for films, and I don't know, like, what was the last clever title for a movie?
The last clever title. Jeez, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's something that's kind of like, maybe it was just a Prisoner of the Moment or Prisoner of the Era where everybody was trying to like.
He also had like Dream with the Fishes.
Oh, that's right.
I like that movie.
Yeah, I like that movie too, actually.
I have a poster from the that they gave us during the pre-screening, like before it came out.
Mm-hmm.
They gave us all posters and shit. I still have that.
Actually, you actually went to the screening of that movie?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it in video. That's a kind of like one of those like lost, not gems per se, but it's kind of like a cool little quirky movie. So many of those came out back then,
Oh yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. But yes, storyboarding is cool, kids. Wear your sunglasses when you start drawing, your compositions, your vision of your compositions.
Yeah, well, and again, and now also one of the more boring elements, at least for me, is that happens during pre-production is your budgeting. Again, if you're an indie filmmaker, you're probably not worried about that because you're not shooting with any money anyways.
That's awesome.
But there's the budgeting that the producers would do, and there's also scheduling. And I think scheduling is very important because you want to be as efficient as you can so that you don't waste people's time. Because remember that, again, when you're doing independent films, you're kind of taking the goodwill of actors who are working for free for you, maybe for a piece of the back end if there's ever a back end. But they're kind enough to lend them your time. You don't want to waste their time. So definitely schedule things and, confirm and reconfirm that your locations are set and that you're not going to get booted last minute so that you don't waste anybody's time. I think that's an important thing to get done in pre-production, and it's an important consideration to have during production.
Mm-hmm.
If people are lending you their time, be as efficient as you can with their time, and also
Mm-hmm.
be as conscious of the fact that they're being kind enough to lending their time for your vision. So be considerate,
Yeah.
and part of that consideration is just scheduling it properly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes you got to run and gun, and sometimes things will come up last minute, and it's like, okay, I've got this great location, but I only have it tomorrow, and you got to hustle the troops. But if you could keep that to a minimum, I think you'd benefit a great deal.
Yeah, man.
And have discussions with your actors. One of the things that I liked when I went
So
to
essentially, the main message you're sending is like, be as well prepared as you possibly can, because it will make it easier for the
for
eventual
everyone,
wiggle room that's going to come naturally because of the nature of
yes, yeah,
of what a production goes through.
and also being at the highest level of preparedness that you can is a consideration to the people that are helping you with your project. That they'll appreciate, even if they won't notice it. Here's the thing: if you're really prepared, they won't notice it as much. If you're underprepared, everybody's going to notice.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind. And yes, and eventually every production runs into some kind of hurdle where you have to, where you have to improvise and you have to figure shit out on the spot. And so you have to maintain. So be prepared, but don't get so rigid that you can't work outside those bounds. Because
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna have to at some point. I think
Mm-hmm.
seriously, unless your film takes place in your house and is like 2 minutes long, every production is going to run into some kind of bullshit that you got to figure out on the fly. So you have to maintain a level of fluidity to be able to
or,
navigate that.
or just make movies that take place in your house
Or
and
just,
avoid
yeah.
all this.
And
Yeah,
even
or
then,
avoid all these problems.
and even then, you never know. Maybe there's like a break in a house next to
Oh,
you, and you got to deal with a helicopter over your house all day on a day you were planning on shooting.
actually, that's all okay. And aside, I remember one of the productions I work with. We actually shot quite a bit of it in the director's house, but we actually had delays because the circuit broke because of all the lights we had connected,
Mm-hmm.
all the Mo Richardsons and the Iries, and they took us so much energy, that electricity, that actually had the breakers go down. We actually, and man, those rooms get hot,
Oh yeah,
hot. I mean, you're like, it's like being in a sandy beach or something. That's how
yeah.
bad it can get.
This
So
was the stuff you had to deal with before you had the benefit of like LED panels
yeah,
for lighting,
exactly.
which don't put off any heat at all, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's in these endeavors, there's always gonna be a lot of uh conflicts and circumstances that come your way in which you have to adjust, and that's part of the reason filmmakers are crazy people,
Mm-hmm.
because most sane people wouldn't want to actually dabble into an industry that is
Well, who wants to deal
has
with that stress?
yeah, they're so stressed and so malleable, you know what I mean? Like, it's not it's not for everyone, but I would say those who actually go into it, it's not it's already kind of like a situation where unexpected the unexpected, but the better prepared you are for it, the better prepared you'll be to adjust to that uncertainty
Sure.
during
Yeah.
production.
Yeah, and always maintain that level of fluidity. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like your pre-production is not a way for you to get rigid and set in your ways about what you want in this film. It's mostly just setting up the guideposts so you know where you're headed for, but also knowing that there's going to be plenty of detours and bumps on the road.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So, anyways, we've gone on for an hour now. I think that's pretty good.
That was an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, and I drew like 3 storyboards. I thought I was gonna get more done. I guess this chatting and drawing thing doesn't work for me.
I think it only works for Bob Ross. It works for Bob Ross.
happy little detectives. Happy little detectives. We're gonna put a little happy little hat on this happy little detective.
Oh, and there's a happy little trench
And
coat.
there's a happy
Happy little
little
trench coat.
bunch of bottles. Happy little bunch of bottles. Happy little
Yeah, but you
change.
can make it. You can make it whatever you want. You like vodka? It could be vodka.
It could be vodka. You like rum? It could be rum.
Whatever you want. Whatever you want. It's just about you and your short neo noir story. Happy little gun. You see the gun? It could be
Happy little
anything
gun.
you
Happy.
want.
You,
Happy
you
little.
see that pile of cocaine? Happy little cocaine. Happy little cocaine.
Is there cocaine involved in this script?
No, I don't think there's cocaine in the
I
script.
know there's no cocaine.
No, but there is drug use in the script.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, cool. All right. Well, those are the impromptu benefits of pre-production that we could at least think of off the top of our head. I'm sure there's more, and we'll probably cover it later. But I don't know. I'm pretty happy with that. You good? You got anything else to add?
No, man. I think we're good.
Cool. All right. Well, if you were watching this, thanks for watching, and we'll be back soon with a review of Avengers, and we still have to get to that Last Jedi review.
We're doing Avengers.
Yeah, we should.
Okay, I thought we were just gonna do foreign films from now on that nobody's seen.
No, we should cover the contemporary ones. The thing is, it takes so long to watch these movies that sometimes I wonder, what the benefit of it is. But
Yeah, but you don't want to spoil it for everyone. Jesus.
I'll put spoilers in the title, and then that's their fault if they watch it.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks, John.
But
All right, bye.